So Google loses this massive antitrust case. Everyone's expecting the tech world to just completely get shaken up. But the real story here wasn't the verdict itself. No, it was the twist that came next. Something almost nobody saw coming.
Google took its biggest L of all time. I mean, that pretty much sums it up, right? When the verdict dropped, it felt like this huge victory for competition, a major blow against one of the most powerful companies on the planet. The stage was set for a serious reckoning.
All right, so to really get why that ending was so surprising, we've got to rewind a little bit. Why was Google even found to be a monopoly in the first place? What exactly was the crime here?
Well, the court was crystal clear. It wasn't just that Google was big. The problem was that it was actively using its immense power to lock out any real competition. The whole case was built around these enormous multi-billion-dollar deals that were all designed to make Google search the one and only choice for millions of us.
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, look at this number. $20 billion. That's the mind-boggling amount Google was reportedly paying Apple every single year just to be the default search engine on every iPhone. These deals were the absolute heart of the case. I mean, think about that for a second. That payment to Apple alone was more than a third of its entire search revenue. And then you have Mozilla. Google's payments made up 85% of their total income. You get this crazy situation where even Google's competitors are basically on its payroll.
And on top of all that, you have Google's own browser, Chrome. It absolutely dominates the market with a 69% share. Chrome is the glue that holds the entire Google ecosystem together, creating this powerful feedback loop that's just incredibly hard for anyone else to break into.
So, you've got a guilty verdict. You've got all this evidence. All the experts were predicting a really severe punishment, something that would fundamentally change how Google does business. But what the judge actually delivered? Well, let's just call it a major plot twist.
The widespread expectation, and this was the government's biggest ask, was that Google would be forced to sell off its Chrome browser. But the reality? It was stunning. Google got to keep Chrome. It got to keep Android. Its entire business model was left pretty much intact.
So, what was the punishment, you ask? Well, it was a few, let's say, minor changes. They have to share some data, tweak how they bundle apps on Android, and a new rule about making deals. But you got to pay close attention to that last point. They had to stop making exclusive deals. That single word, exclusive, is the key to this whole story.
And here it is, the most shocking part of all. The ruling allows those massive deals with Apple and Mozilla to just continue. The only catch, they just have to change the wording in the contract so it's not technically exclusive. So in theory, another company could try to outbid Google, if they happen to have a spare $20 billion a year lying around.
This all leads to the obvious question. Why? Why was the punishment so much lighter than anyone, and I mean anyone, expected? Let's dive into the judge's official reasoning.
Okay, so the judge's explanation for this incredibly lenient decision really boiled down to two main points.
First, the judge said that the government just went too far. In his view, forcing Google to sell off a key asset like Chrome was an overreach. Why? Because that specific asset wasn't directly used to carry out the illegal deals that were at the center of the case. And the second reason? It was even more about the future. The judge basically argued that technology is already solving the problem. The rise of generative AI is changing the whole game so fast that Google's current dominance in old-school search might not even matter in a few years anyway. New AI tools could just make it obsolete.
So, the verdict is in. The light penalties are set. What happened next? How did the real world, especially the financial markets, react to the news that the Google empire would get to stay pretty much as it is?
The reaction was immediate, and it was loud. The day the news broke, Google's stock shot up by 10%. The market wasn't just relieved, it was ecstatic.
Now, a 10% jump for a company of Google's size is almost impossible to imagine. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in market value added in a single day. The verdict wasn't a punishment. From a financial point of view, it was a massive reward. So the final outcome was crystal clear. Google's core business was safe, and the market celebrated by making the company way, way more valuable. And as a final little footnote, the source material also pointed out that call options on Google stock, which had been purchased by Nancy Pelosi's husband a few months before, became deeply profitable right after this ruling came down.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. This whole case was supposed to promote competition,
to punish monopolistic behavior. But if the end result is a multi-hundred-billion-dollar payday for the company that lost the case, well, what message does that send? And what does it really mean for the future of competition in tech?